Sorry for that kind of awkward, truncated moment, but we're gonna pick back up with biodiesel.
And then with biodiesel, biodiesel is really interesting. We're usually using a waste oil from some other process and then purifying it, adding things to it if we need to, so that we can then burn it.
Can we fries as an example?
Yeah. Did you say French fry oil? Yeah, that's the example I like to give too. Right, so there are a lot of restaurants that use big vats of oil to fry things in, right? It takes a lot of oil to deep fry something. But oftentimes they don't use all of that oil. So we can take that oil, we can scrape out, the little bits of French fry and things like that. Yeah, bacon grease, there are lots of different oils we can do this with. Most of them are food related because that's where we like to put oils. And we can actually purify them enough that we can burn them for power, similarly to how we burn diesel fuel in a diesel engine. So there are some places where you can actually get biodiesel at the pump. And biodiesel means that it has come from a living source, right? So if we're talking about French fry oil, that might not seem like a living source, but that oil probably came from corn or soybeans or something. And I have never tried to deep fry a Furby. I'm not really sure why you would want to do that. But maybe you could use the waste oil for biofuel, so that could be a good application. So if we are burning alcohol and oil for power, do you think that those would produce air pollution? Yeah?
Yes.
Some people think yes. Someone says no. People are putting in their answers. Let's see what folks are thinking. Got some yeses, you've got some maybes. Yeah, so if we're burning something for power, there's almost always going to be air pollution. And in the case of biodiesel and ethanol, yes, they still produce air pollution. The hope is that they produce less than regular diesel or gasoline. But I'll let the group who covers biodiesel probably talk more about that tomorrow. You say it's scary seeing it after it's over, Olivia. All right, so we talked about all of these as being alternative energy sources, right? None of these are fossil fuels, so they're alternative. But there's another term that you've probably heard, which is renewable. So renewable energy sources can replenish as quickly as we're using them, right? So if we put out a solar panel, it can use sunshine to generate electricity, but it doesn't make the sun produce any less, right? We don't have to worry about running out of it because the sun is continuing to send us energy all the time. Let's see, I saw a question, reuse, from Isabel. Do you want to elaborate on that? No? Okay. I'll catch up with you later. So yes, you're right. Clouds could block the sun, but we always know that it's there. It's going to bring us more energy, even if not today, hopefully tomorrow. Right, so another example would be wind, right? Wind is renewable because the wind is always being replenished. There's always more wind, right? We might have a day that's not windy, but we know that in the future we'll have more wind. We're not going to run out of it. So, thinking about these four sources of energy, right? Solar power, which we talked about today, natural gas, which we talked about yesterday, wave power, and biofuel. Yes, Olivia, you're right. The sun will explode eventually, but hopefully none of us will be around to deal with that. So thinking about these four energy sources, how would you categorize them? Do you think that they are renewable, right? Which means that they're also alternative because there are no renewable fossil fuels. Do you think they're alternative, but maybe not renewable? Or do they just belong out here on the side? Are they not alternative? Are they some kind of fossil fuel? Let's see what people are thinking. Okay, got a lot of different thoughts happening. So the first one, we talked at the very beginning about natural gas. So what is natural gas? Is it a fossil fuel? Is it alternative, or is it renewable? It's a fossil fuel, right? So a fossil fuel can't be an alternative because an alternative is defined as not being a fossil fuel, right? You can't be both. So natural gas, the red square, that's a fossil fuel. Doesn't belong. All right, then I kind of gave away the answer for solar power. Is solar power renewable, or is it just alternative?
Everyone is everywhere on that.
I know, we're all over the place, but it looks like most people have decided that solar power is renewable. And I agree with that, right? The sun is not running out of energy because we're using it. In fact, we use only a tiny, 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 tiny fraction of the energy that the sun delivers us every day. All right, similarly with wave power, right? When we use power from waves, Kaylee, you should be able to find the link back in the chat, but I'll see if I can put it in again. There you go. When we use the power from waves, right, are we depleting the amount of waves that we're going to get tomorrow? Right, are we going to run out of waves? Are we? Are we going to run out of waves by generating power from them?
No, because as long as we have the moon, we're good.
Exactly. Yeah, so, right, the waves are caused by the moon creates the tides, and that's going to keep happening, right? I mean, barring some terrible disaster where we lose our poor moon, right, we will have waves. So that is a renewable source of power. And then finally, biofuel. That's the last one we talked about. It's a little bit more complicated. But if we are growing a crop of corn, and then we process it into ethanol and burn it, and then we do the same thing next year, right? We grow a crop of corn, we produce it into ethanol, and then we burn it. Is that renewable? Are we using more than we can create? So if we grow corn specifically to make ethanol, right? We grow it, we use it. We grow it, we use it. Are we using more than we can grow? No, right? We can't use any more than we can grow, right? So we could easily run out, right? We might not be able to grow enough, but because we are replenishing it, right, it can be considered renewable. Most people think of it as renewable. Okay. And then we've got our next four energy sources. So we've got oil, nuclear, geothermal, and wind. So one thing to remember is that nuclear energy requires us to mine for radioactive material. All right, so let me know what you think. Looks like most people are starting with wind. That's a good choice. Yeah, and wind, right, we talked about that just a minute ago. Wind is renewable, right? So there's always going to be more wind. It's replenished as quickly as we are using it. And there's lots of wind that we don't even use for energy, right? All right, people seem pretty convinced about geothermal as well. That's awesome. Geothermal is also renewable, right? The earth is still going to be hot, right? We're not making the earth any colder by using that energy. Awesome. And then nuclear, so right, I gave you a little bit of a hint. So nuclear, we have to mine for radioactive material, similar to how we mine for fossil fuels. So even though nuclear is not a fossil fuel, it's not renewable, right? We can't really make more radioactive material easily, right? We have to mine it, and we're not getting more. So that is an alternative that's not renewable. And finally, oil. So I realize this could be confusing because we just talked about using French fry oil as a biofuel. But if we're talking about crude oil, the fossil fuel, right, then we have to take it out entirely, right, because that is a fossil fuel. It's not an alternative. It's not renewable. All right, good job, guys. So that is the end of our notes for today. And what I'd like you to do for the rest of class is work on your group project. So we'll go over this again real quick. So for your group project, you should find this in the Google Classroom, and your assignment will have 2 parts. Okay, so there's a slideshow that has all of the slides I'm about to go over, including the template you'll be filling out. And then the second part is an evaluation that you'll fill out tomorrow about how well your group worked together. Okay, so don't worry about that part yet. I'll ask you to do that tomorrow. But for today, you can go ahead and exit out of the Pear Deck if you would like to. We won't be using that anymore. And you can open this up in the classroom if it'd be more helpful to look at it directly. But I'll also project it on the screen here. So for the group project, again, working with your group, you're going to fill out a template for a trading card, okay, for your assigned energy source, including its strengths, its weaknesses, special abilities, all the stuff we talked about yesterday. I'd like you to have each person in your group take one of the sections to work on. So take ownership in one of the sections, right? You could say, I'm going to do all the strengths and work on that. And then work with the rest of your group to make sure the whole card gets filled in, right? So you don't just have to fill out one section per person. You do have to do the whole card. I would just like everyone to share in the responsibility of getting that done. And then tomorrow, in Friday, sorry, Olivia, I don't know what that is supposed to mean. Oh, peppers. Oh, I'm sorry. I do that all the time, and it's so uncomfortable. Tomorrow in class, you will be sharing your trading card. Okay, so you don't have the normal 5 days to do this assignment, right? You need to do it for tomorrow so you have something to share. Okay, and so for that presentation, here are the guidelines. Okay, it doesn't have to be long, right? Just a few minutes. I just want you to tell us what you put on your card, explain anything that you think might need explaining, and why that information is important, right? Why did you put that on the card? I'd like for every group member to speak, right? You don't have to say much, but I'd like for everyone to say something. And then as an audience member, you'll need to ask one question to another group, okay? So each group will try to answer questions the best they can. You don't have to know the answer to everything. I don't know the answer to everything, but we'll work together and see if we can answer them. All right? And then how to submit this. So in your assignment, you'll have, like I said, a copy of this slideshow, right? But it's not shared with your group. Every person has their own. I will show you the groups again in just 1 minute. So what I'd like you to do is with your group, determine one person who will take that slideshow and share it with your group members so that you're all working on the same document. That'll be the easiest way to fill it in, okay? And then that person will turn it in for the group, and please comment on the assignment so I know that it's your work that I should look at rather than someone else in the group who maybe didn't fill it in, okay? And Madison, I would prefer that you not work alone, but you can talk to me after class if you'd like. So then after your presentations, you'll fill out the Google form that talks about how well you work together as a group. Okay, so here are the groups again. Okay, does anyone not see their name? Everyone's got a buddy. Awesome. Okay, great. So that is the person that you are going to be working with, or people. So I'd like for, at some point, you to get in touch with them and figure out how you're going to work on this. But really quickly, let me just show you 2 more things that are in that slideshow. The first is I've suggested some resources for you to look at that might be able to help you get started. Okay, so on the trading card, you'll be listing a description, which we've pretty much talked about today. We've described all of them a little bit. You'll include an image, which you can get from the internet, or you can create your own, however creative you want to get. And then for the strengths and weaknesses, these links all include pros and cons of the different energy sources, okay? So you don't have to use these. You can look anywhere on the internet, but I just thought these might be helpful to get you started. And then finally, you'll include some sort of fun fact or special ability, whatever you think is interesting and you want other people to know. So